Module 4, Learn 1, Part 2, Co-Exploring Opportunities for AI Interaction. And I am Chris Stillwell. Learning objectives are that by the time you finish this module, you will be able to write a detailed prompt to create an AI chatbot that matches the objectives of a course and the needs of the students, and engage all students in a demonstration of how to interact with an AI chatbot. For example, in a chain story or a role play. Now, some closing questions from the last video are, once we've designed an AI interaction for language learning, like a role play, what's next? Are the students ready to do it by themselves, or should we try it together? What might be some benefits of trying it together? And what are some techniques for doing that? Let's focus on question number 3. What might be some benefits of trying out this role play, or maybe a chain story, some kind of interaction together as a whole class first? Well, the first thing is, when we engage with AI as a class, we get opportunities to learn about the students' ideas about AI and how to use it. For example, if we're saying to the students, what should I type in here in this window? What kind of a prompt should I create? Then we're learning a lot about their views of how this works. And then together we can explore it. We can co-explore how to write a prompt. We can experiment. We can try what the students say first. Maybe it doesn't work as well as we would like. We can give advice. We can try some different things together and try to come up with something that seems to work well. We can also show students how to use AI in a way that facilitates learning. Many people are afraid that students will only use AI in a way that helps them kind of cheat and maybe makes it difficult for them to actually increase their learning. So we can try to show them how to use things in a more productive way. We can also teach students about different ways of refining the outputs that AI gives us. We can help them understand that the first response we get from AI does not have to be the last one. If we're not happy with what we see, if it's not what we wanted, we can always push back. We can say, no, let's try again, and we can give more instructions. Now, some ingredients for successful AI interaction in class are scaffolding, right? Supporting our students to make it easier for them to accomplish something that might be difficult the first time, but we give them enough help. And then maybe we try it again and we take away some of that help so that they are learning over time to do things by themselves. But in the beginning, we give a lot of scaffolding, a lot of support. In-class interaction with peers is another part. We want everyone to be engaged. We want everyone to participate. And so if we find a way for students to talk to their neighbors or work on something together with classmates, we have more engagement and more learning happening. And one other thing is instructor guidance, of course. So the instructor is there helping them to see what they need to do and giving them feedback. So in my last video, we talked about role plays, where the AI is kind of pretending to speak to the students, and they're taking on different roles of maybe a waiter and a customer, or a host of a party and a guest of the party. But in this case, let's try something similar. It's an AI chain story. Now, in a chain story, the story is created by 2 or more people together. One person creates a piece of it, and then someone else continues the story, and someone else goes on from there, and on and on. So here's an example. Again, with my class, it was Halloween time in California. And so I asked my students to help me make a story about something like this. And so I said, let's make a story about a haunted house, a house with some ghosts in it, perhaps. And so the first step was, as a class, we brainstormed. We tried to think of ideas on our own with no AI. And so the first thing we thought is, if we make a story about a haunted house, what words will be good for the story? What are some possible words? So I started out very easy. I didn't ask the students to write the story or anything like that. I just said, what words do you think we might need? And so the students gave me words like cold, Halloween night, midnight, looking for shelter, looking for a safe place, maybe from the cold, right? So they started throwing these ideas out there, and I just typed them up or wrote them on the board so that we could see them all and put them together. The next thing we did is we did something called think or write and pair share. Perhaps you've heard of this before, think, pair, share. It's a great way to get students to participate and really have everyone participate. So it begins with students writing by themselves. So we know we're going to write a story about a haunted house. We have those words on the board that help us think of some ideas or give us some vocabulary we can use. So then students get a couple of minutes to try to write something by themselves of a beginning of a story. But then after a few minutes, then we change to the pair section. And that's when they join with someone near them, they join with a neighbor, and they talk about it together. And maybe they share their ideas, and maybe they start to combine their ideas into a single beginning of the story. But after a few minutes, then we go even bigger to the sharing part. And the sharing part is when the instructor takes ideas from the different pairs and tries to find a way to put them all together. So just like in that earlier stage where the instructor just collected different ideas of vocabulary to put them on the board, now the instructor can take different ideas of story and put them on the board as well, and then find a way to combine them. And so in my case, I got a lot of different ideas, but they were all something about a haunted house and about needing to go inside. And so after thinking about it and working together with the students for a few minutes, we were able to put it together as a single paragraph that looks something like this. It was a cold Halloween night. I was returning from a Halloween party with my 3 friends. Suddenly, our car got a flat tire in front of a mysterious old dark house. Now, flat tire means, right, the wheel of the car doesn't have air in it, and so you can't drive anymore. The house had broken windows, spider webs, and a cemetery. Some people call it a graveyard, a cemetery in the front yard. Wow, scary, right? Okay, so that was our beginning. And in this paragraph that I kind of wrote it, but I included ideas from everybody as much as I could. And I asked students to give me ideas for, is this a good way to do it, or should we do that? And so together we were writing this paragraph, but I was the leader. And next, it's time to give it to the AI so that we're having a chain story. Now, what do you think? Could you do this so far? Could you, or could you do the next step, right? We need to create a prompt to make a chain story for language learning and tell the AI to be a good co-author, a good partner. Just like before, we talked about how can we make the AI be a good role play partner? We need to do the same thing here. AI naturally wants to be super helpful. And if I'm not careful about my instructions, I might say, I want to make a story about a haunted house, and then the AI will create 5 paragraphs of a complete story with no participation from me at all. So I need to give good instructions. So what do you think? Could you give instructions to avoid that problem, to make the AI actually collaborate with you in writing a story? What would that look like? Well, here's what it looked like for us. We said something like, let's make a story about a haunted house. We can take turns. Now, this is essential, right? This is, I don't want you to write the whole story by yourself, and I'm not either. We're going to take turns. I will start the story. I will write just a little bit, and then it's your turn. I'm being very explicit about what, it's, to me, this is obvious, but we have to communicate it to the chatbot because it's not obvious to someone who is not already aware of this, right? All right. And then when it's your turn, you add just a little bit, and then it's my turn again. Now you'll notice I'm talking to ChatGPT or Pi AI, whatever it is, I'm talking to it as though it were a person, because that's how it's designed. It is designed for us to talk to it as though it were a person. It's not a person, of course, but that's the way we communicate with it. And that's another reason why I love this for language class, because we are giving students a chance to practice communicating with something that is kind of like a person. Okay, so when you look at this slide here, I hope you can see how I'm trying to be very clear about my expectations and the limitations. I'm telling the AI, don't go crazy, don't write everything, just write a little bit, then it's my turn, we go back and forth. Okay, so from there, the response I got was, sure, that sounds like a great idea. And Pi AI likes to invent language to be very conversational. So it invented spooktacular. As you can see, that's not a real word, but okay. He says, I'm ready to spin this haunted tale with you. Go ahead and start us off. And so, Pi AI is communicating that it's enthusiastic and ready to go. So then I shared the paragraph. As you can see, it was a cold Halloween night and all of that. I shared the paragraph that my students and I had written together. And right away, I got a response continuing the story. Now, the continuation had some vocabulary that was a little bit difficult for my students. So maybe I needed to add some further instructions of, I'm a beginner ESL student, use language for CEFR level A2. Maybe I needed to say something like that, but that's okay. When we looked at it more closely, though, we did see that we could understand the main idea, especially this part here, where it says a ghoulish figure stood before us, beckoning us inside with a bony finger. Ooh. So, and right there, one thing I really like about this response that we got from Pi AI in this case was that it really does kind of continue the story, but it also gives it back to us of, ooh, what happens next? And so I hope that with a chain story like this, if students practice this on their own, they will be motivated to practice their language because they want to add to the story and see where it goes next. And it becomes kind of a game, something fun, something that they are curious about. They want to know, where is this going? Maybe they want closure. So here are some steps for a full class chain story and a role play with AI. So we're demonstrating to students how they can do this on their own, the role play or the chain story, by practicing it together in class. The first step is together we generate a prompt for the AI. We create some kind of instructions for the AI. We give it a scenario, it's a Halloween party or it's a story about a haunted house. We give some parameters of, don't talk too much, just say a little bit and then it's my turn. Things like that. Decide who begins the story or the role play. Maybe in the example of the role play, we finished with something like, if you understand these instructions, introduce yourself and welcome us to the party, for example, right? Or in the chain story example, it was, I will give you the beginning and then you continue. Next, as a class, we analyze the response that we get from the AI, and we use strategies to work out the meaning. Remember, we can freeze it. We can analyze it. We can look more closely and try to figure out vocabulary in context and things like that, and learn from that. And then when we are finally ready, we can continue. And when we continue, we can use that think, pair, share routine, right? Where students first write something by themselves, write some ideas about how do I respond to this? What do we do next? And then they share their ideas with somebody near them, and that's the pairing part. And then everybody shares as a class. And as a teacher, I can respond to things. I can say how great everybody's ideas are, and I can try to synthesize all of these different ideas into one response that we will put into the window for the next prompt with the AI. Next, we post that class-generated response to the AI. So we all came up with it together, and I type that in. I give it to the AI, to Pi AI or ChatGPT or Gemini, for example. And then we can repeat steps 3, 4, and 5 again and again until we are satisfied. After that, we can have a closing discussion where we evaluate the prompts that we made. Did we give clear instructions to AI, or was there something that we needed to say more? I already mentioned that maybe for the chain story, perhaps I should have said something about the language level so that it would use simpler English for my students. And then finally, the homework step would be that students can take the same prompt that we wrote, and maybe even the same story that we wrote so far, and continue. They can try the role play again, or they can give on their own. They can give the whole story that we've created so far, and then continue the story on their own. But students can be encouraged to try this out on their own now that they've tested it out together with you. Now, again, some benefits of this kind of chain story in class are that as we do the activity, we get opportunities to learn students' ideas about it and maybe redirect them sometimes. We can explore together how to write a prompt that is effective. We can show students how to use AI in a way that facilitates learning. These role plays and chain stories do not involve any kind of cheating or shortcuts. They involve students using their language abilities to try to communicate. That's ideal. That's a great way to learn language. And we can teach students about different ways of refining the output that AI gives us. So we can help them understand that very often the first time we try something, we get a response from AI that is not what we wanted. But that doesn't mean it didn't work. It just means we need to try again. We need to give further instructions. We need to push back and redirect. All right, so we've reached the end of this video. I have some reflection questions for you to consider. One is, how could you write a prompt to begin an AI chain story? What information would you want to provide? How would you ensure that the AI would be a good partner that engages the students in language learning? So think about it. Do you remember from the video? Could you do it? How could you lead a demonstration of AI interaction with an entire class? How would you make sure all students were engaged? What would you do if the AI response was somehow disappointing? So imagine the situation if you're teaching students how to use AI by doing it together, and how would you handle that? And finally, what are some of the potential benefits of AI interactions for language learners? All right. So this has been Learn 1 Part 2, Co-Exploring Opportunities for AI Interaction. And I am still Chris.